yourself and your family. You're embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing yourself.
That's T.I. with his own son in a headlock, on camera, at an NFL game, broadcast live to the world. But that's not even the half of it, because the beef he started with 50 Cent got so ugly, so personal, that what Tip did next left the entire culture speechless. The smoke that shook the whole culture. Aight, look, the rap game is burning right now, and ain't nobody predict this fire. What jumped off as a Versus call-out between two bona fide legends turned into one of the nastiest, most disrespectful beefs hip-hop done seen in years. Mamas getting dragged, wives getting posted, sons getting thrown into the trenches, whole legacies getting torched in the group chat. And then, right when everybody thought these two was gonna ride this thing to the grave, T.I. went and did the one thing nobody on God's green earth expected. He reached out, he apologized. But nah, we ain't getting to that part yet, because the road to that apology is littered with diss tracks, deleted posts, family warfare, and a level of violation that would make the most battle-tested vets in this rap game cringe. And if you think the 50 Cent situation is where this story wraps up, stay locked in, because there's a whole other chapter with T.I.'s own son King Harris that went hands-on, on camera, in a way the internet still can't stop replaying. Now the roots of this smoke go way back to the early 2000s, when both Tip and Fif were running laps on this rap game from opposite sides of the map. T.I. out of Atlanta repping Bankhead, 50 Cent out of Queens repping South Jamaica, both of them carrying street credentials that wasn't cooked up in nobody's studio. For years, it looked like mutual respect on the surface. They'd cross paths at award shows, festivals, industry functions, no real static. But underneath all that, the tension was bubbling like a pot with the lid on too tight. That's what happens when two alphas share the same jungle, both of them convinced they the king of it. Neither one of these men was built to play the background, and in an industry where your rank gets measured every single day by sales, features, and cultural pull, the question of who outranked who was always hovering like a storm cloud waiting to crack. Fast forward to the Versus era, when the whole culture was fiending for legendary matchups, and T.I. claims that during a TV promo run out in Los Angeles, he and 50 Cent shook on a private agreement. The arrangement, according to Tip, was simple. T.I. would throw the public challenge, 50 would step up and accept, and the fans would get the showdown they'd been starving for. Two catalogs loaded with nothing but anthems, going hit for hit on a stage designed for exactly that kind of warfare. But when the moment came for 50 to honor his word, according to T.I., the phone went silent. No acceptance, no acknowledgement, just crickets. And in this game, when a man you expected to stand 10 toes beside you goes ghost, that ain't just a letdown. That's a violation of the code. By February 6th and 7th of 2026, T.I. was done holding it in. He pulled up on the Nightcap podcast with Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco, and what came out of his mouth wasn't no subtle hint. It was a full-blown call-out, delivered with the kind of energy that told you this man had been sitting on this frustration for a minute. And when you hear it in his own voice, you feel exactly where his head was at.
Nah, I said I wanted 50. That's what I said. He don't want no smoke, though. Oh, no! I called my man out. He don't want no smoke. He ducking smoke. It's cool.
That clip hit every timeline within hours. Tip wasn't moving in the shadows. He was on a nationally watched podcast telling the whole world that Curtis Jackson was ducking the fade. And if you know anything about 50 Cent, you know that kind of public disrespect don't get left on red. It gets answered. 50 clapped back almost immediately on the gram, posting clips from T.I.'s old court appearances and throwing up a PSA-style meme basically saying, "Forget Versus, let's do the stay away challenge and just keep our distance." He threw a LOL on top of it, because that's 50's whole playbook. Turn your opponent into a joke before the first bar even drops. But T.I. wasn't amused, not even a little. By February 11th, 50 turned the heat all the way up by calling T.I. King Rat on Instagram, bringing back the snitching allegations that had been following Tip since his 2007 federal firearms plea deal. In hip-hop, catching that label is worse than being called washed. That stain don't scrub off, no matter how many platinum plaques you got on the wall. T.I. came back swinging with a message that left zero room for debate, declaring that only one of them was really a rat, and that he had the paperwork to prove it, telling 50 to lace up the gloves or keep his mouth closed and live scared. The social media back and forth was entertaining, but everybody knew the real ammo was gonna come on wax, and Tip delivered. On February 22nd, he sat down on $1 million worth of game and laid the whole betrayal out in detail. How they had the conversation, how they agreed to the battle, and how once T.I. put himself out there in public, 50 played dumb like the conversation never happened. In Tip's eyes, that wasn't just cowardice, that was a character deficiency. Then, the very next day, February 23rd, T.I. dropped the first diss track, a snippet called War, making his intentions loud and clear. But he wasn't done cooking. Same day, he unleashed the full package, a track called The Right One that went places most diss records wouldn't dare touch. Them bars hit like a battering ram. T.I. wasn't just checking 50's toughness, he was tearing down the whole persona that made Curtis Jackson a household name. The track went even further, painting 50 as nothing but a meme page admin and a troll hiding behind a phone screen. And in its most controversial bar, T.I. took aim at 50 Cent's late mother, crossing a line that even the most savage beef veterans consider untouchable. The internet split down the middle. Half the timeline praised Tip for going bar for bar with one of rap's most dangerous verbal assassins. The other half condemned him for dragging a deceased parent into the crossfire. But if T.I.'s bars were the earthquake, what 50 did next was the aftershock that turned the whole situation thermonuclear. 50 posted an unflattering photo of T.I.'s wife Tiny on the gram, captioning it with a warning to keep his name out they mouths. One post. That's all it took to drag an innocent woman into the war zone, violating the unwritten law that spouses and families stay off limits. The stakes went from rap rivalry to deeply personal, and that's when King Harris, T.I. and Tiny's son, jumped in the ring with a fury nobody was ready for.
How y'all raised? I'm not raised like that.
King wasn't holding nothing back. He was on Instagram Live, voice trembling with raw emotion, making it crystal clear that coming at his mama was a boundary that would not be crossed without consequences. And then he took it somewhere nobody saw coming.
So tell your mama dig her up and post a picture that look better than my mama.
That response detonated across the internet. A young boy telling a billionaire entertainment mogul to go dig up his deceased mother for a side-by-side comparison. It was vicious. It was unfiltered. The kind of moment that makes you realize this beef done left the rap arena and entered a place where real hurt lives. And King wasn't letting up. He came back even harder, doubling down with an intensity that proved this wasn't clout chasing. This was a son protecting the woman who brought him into this world.
I want to say something about my mama. Your mama, go dig her up.
You could hear the pain bleeding through the anger. This wasn't no rapper workshopping a punchline. This was a son riding for the woman who raised him, whatever the cost.
Post a picture of your mama. She pay respect. Stop playing with my mama.
50 responded the only way 50 knows how, with memes. He threw up an image comparing King to Pepe the Frog and called the whole family ugly, flipping a deeply emotional moment into internet comedy. Even Tina Knowles, Beyonce's mama, stepped in to defend Tiny publicly, widening the circle of people locked into this beef and adding a layer of cultural gravity that went way beyond rap. The whole internet was holding its breath at that point, wondering if this thing was about to jump from keyboards to real life, because the tension was thick enough to choke on. The retreat and the twist. By February 24th, 50 was on his boss timing, flexing in a whole different arena while his opponent was still throwing punches at air. He hopped on social media to announce he just sold out a Broadway production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone, posted it with the shocked face emoji like, "While you in the booth recording disses nobody asked for, I'm moving units on stages you can't even get a ticket to." That's the ultimate disrespect, fam. The kind of flex that don't need a single bar to land, because it rewrites the whole narrative. Think about what that does to a man's psyche. Tip just emptied every ounce of lyrical venom he had into 2 diss tracks, one of which crossed the sacred line of going at somebody's dead moms. And 50's response wasn't a counter record, it was a Broadway receipt. That's the kind of move that shifts the whole battlefield, because suddenly it ain't about who got better bars no more. It's about who got more relevance in 2026, and that's a question T.I. might not want the world answering out loud. King Harris jumped in on his pop's behalf, putting the internet on notice about 50's long history of beefing with Lil' Kim, outselling Kanye and everybody else, painting him as a career antagonist who starts smoke for entertainment, not principle, a man who turns his platform into a weapon against whoever catches attention that particular week. And then came February 25th, 2026, the day the whole script got flipped. No warning, no explanation, no caption. 50 Cent wiped every single T.I. related post off his Instagram. Every meme, every troll, every clap back, erased, scrubbed clean like the beef never existed. The internet went full CSI. Was 50 waving the white flag? Was he reloading for something bigger? Did the lawyers step in? Or was something happening behind closed doors that the public didn't have access to? Because let's be real, 50 Cent does not fall back. This the same man who went to war with Ja Rule, Rick Ross, Floyd Mayweather, and smiled through every round. His whole brand is built on relentless escalation, not quiet retreat. So for him to erase the receipts on a beef he was actively engaged in just hours earlier, that alone was one of the most shocking moves in modern rap warfare. Here's where the story takes the turn that brought you to this video. Sources tapped into both camps say T.I. made a move nobody had on their bingo card. After days of trading the most savage verbal attacks imaginable, diss tracks aimed at mothers, wives, and children, memes that turned grown men into punchlines, Tip reportedly hit 50 Cent's camp on a direct line, not through the gram, not through press intermediaries, straight communication, phone to phone, and the tone, according to those who know, was a whole different energy from the man who'd been barking about war and smoke for weeks straight. The word that keeps surfacing in every account of that exchange is apology. Now hold on, not the kind of groveling, submissive, down on your knees apology that would bury a man's reputation in these streets. Nah, a calculated, grown man acknowledgement that things had gone way too far, that lines got crossed on both sides, that dragging mothers, living and dead, into a dispute between two men with decades of legacy was beneath everything they'd built. T.I. had already made his stance on respect loud and clear throughout the beef, telling the world straight up he didn't respect 50 no more and didn't want to share a stage with him. But there's a difference between losing respect for somebody's actions and wanting a war that swallows everything in its path. And T.I., a man who's finessed his way through federal cases, survived prison bids, and resurrected his career more than once, apparently realized this particular fire was about to burn down way more than just 50's reputation. It was going to consume King. It was going to consume Tiny. It was going to torch every family member and associate caught in the blast zone. And for a man who built his whole identity on protecting his circle, the math had to change. The timing of 50's mass post-deletion lines up with this account perfectly. If you're 50 and the man who's been sending shots at you for 3 weeks straight suddenly extends an olive branch, you don't fire back with another meme. You clear the field. You wipe the evidence. You make room for whatever comes next. Peace, a business play, or just the absence of active warfare. The fact that neither side has fired a single shot since February 25th tells you everything you need to know. In a beef where both men were posting multiple times daily, the sudden silence is deafening and it's impossible to ignore. Now, the skeptic's gonna be quick to point out that T.I.'s swan song album Kill the King is right around the corner, and that this whole ordeal, from the first Verzuz call out to the diss tracks to the apology, could be one elaborate promo campaign designed to drop Tip back in the conversation at the exact moment he needs maximum eyeballs. Fans already peeped the timing, with observers noting that the second T.I. announces his final album, a beef with 50 Cent materializes out of thin air like a magic trick. And real talk, that theory got legs. The music industry got a long, documented history of manufactured conflicts that juice album sales, and T.I. is smart enough and seasoned enough to know exactly how the machine operates. Every headline, every trending topic, every heated debate in the comments is free promo for a project that ain't even dropped yet. But whether that apology was genuine or strategic, it happened. And it represents something the culture almost never sees. A man winning the public battle, choosing to step back from the edge instead of pushing the whole thing off a cliff, the Black Wall. Street Times reported the feud had turned deeply personal by February 25th, and personal beefs in hip-hop got a nasty habit of ending in tragedy, not resolution. Tip choosing to extend communication instead of extending the conflict might be the most thorough move of this entire saga, because it takes way more heart to de-escalate than it does to keep shooting. But the 50 Cent beef ain't the only situation where T.I. found himself in a confrontation that went physical, went ugly, and went public. Because 2 years before the Verzuz drama, before the diss tracks and the memes and the scrubbed posts, there was a moment caught on camera that showed a completely different side of this man's life. A moment that had nothing to do with rival rappers and everything to do with the hardest relationship any man can navigate, the one with his own son. And what went down at that Atlanta Falcons game on November 26th, 2023 is a story that still hits because it taps into something universal, something that transcends hip-hop and fame and money and cuts straight to the bone of what it means to be a father trying to raise a young man who's desperate to prove he already grown. It was supposed to be a chill family outing, Falcons versus Saints, and T.I. had been on socials earlier that day, showing love to his kids, hyping up the game, doing the regular dad at the stadium thing. Everything looked cool. Everything looked like any other Sunday in the A where a famous family posts up in a luxury suite at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And then King Harris went live on IG from inside that suite, and what the world saw was a father-son argument that went from words to hands in a matter of seconds. The camera wasn't supposed to catch this, or maybe it was, because King made the choice to broadcast the moment that would define how the public sees his relationship with his pops. And once that red light came on, there was no undoing it.
King,
have you ever woke up with a roach on your face?
No, that's not the goal.
All right, then. So there it goes.
in your ear.
Tip was making a point that strikes at the core of the generational gap between a self-made man and the kids who grew up on his dime. He was asking his son, on camera, in front of everybody watching that stream, if King had ever tasted the kind of struggle and poverty that forged T.I. into who he is. The roach question wasn't random. It was a test, a direct challenge to King's tough talk, a reminder that the streets Tip survived would devour his son without blinking.
Y'all want to go to the bando and my neighborhood?
Tip was calling out the performative desire to claim hood credentials without ever having lived through the hood. He was telling his own blood that wanting to visit the trenches for clout and actually making it out alive are two completely different realities, and one don't earn you the right to claim the other.
Do y'all want to go to the bando? Do y'all want to go to the bando? To make him look better.
The message was crystal. King's whole tough guy act, in his father's eyes, was costume play, and for a young man who's dying to be seen as his own individual, separate from the shadow of a famous father, hearing that critique on a public live stream was the spark that blew the whole thing wide open. The king who wouldn't kneel. What popped off next in that Falcons game suite is the kind of moment that defines family dynamics in the social media age, where every private argument is one screen tap away from becoming public consumption. King Harris did not back down from his father's challenge. He didn't swallow the critique and move on quiet the way a kid raised under spotlights is supposed to. Nah, he pushed back with the kind of energy that told everybody watching this wasn't the first time these two had butted heads over the same fundamental question. Is King Harris his own man, or is he living in a fortress his father's money built? The silver spoon talk, the Nepo baby label, the implication that everything King got was gifted and not earned. Them the kind of cuts that slice deeper than any diss track, cause they coming from the one person whose approval matters more than anybody else's on this planet.
I know you.
You can hear the desperation tearing through King's voice. He ain't building a logical argument. He's looping the same words cause the emotions are moving faster than his mouth can keep up with. He knows his father. He knows the man standing in front of him has walked through fire King ain't never touched, but he knows himself too, or at least he believes he does. And the idea that his own pops is publicly stripping away his identity is more weight than he can carry in that moment. The stuttering, the overlapping phrases, the inability to string together a clean rebuttal. That ain't softness. That's what happens when the person you love the most on this earth tells you that you ain't who you think you are.
What's wrong with y'all? Why y'all doing that to me? Y'all know me. You know I stand on business.
That phrase, "I stand on business," became the defining bar of the whole incident. It's King's anthem, his declaration of self, his way of telling the world and his father that he ain't soft, ain't privileged, ain't some product of comfort fronting like he's hard. Every young man alive reaches a point where he gotta look his father dead in the eye and say, "I'm my own person." And King was doing exactly that, just with the entire internet watching and screenshots flying in real time. The argument jumped from verbal to physical when somebody threw a shove, and what followed was T.I. locking his son up in a headlock, a move that was equal parts fatherly instinct and raw aggression, the kind of grip a man applies when words ain't working no more, and physical authority is the only language left in the room.
You are embarrassing yourself and your family. You embarrassing yourself. You are embarrassing yourself.
That was Tip's breaking point. 6 seconds of unfiltered footage that millions would eventually watch on loop. He wasn't trying to hurt his son. He was trying to contain him, trying to physically stop King from doing or saying something that would make this mess even worse. But the optics were brutal. A Grammy-winning rapper, a man who survived the federal system, grappling with his own child in a luxury suite at an NFL game while the cameras were rolling. Tiny stepped between them to break it up, pulling father and son apart before the situation could escalate any further, and for a brief moment, that suite fell into the kind of heavy quiet that only comes after something detonates. In the immediate aftermath, King jumped on Instagram stories with posts that bled defiance and pain in equal measure, declaring that nobody could run up on him and questioning whether his own family viewed him as a mistake. Those posts got deleted quick, but the internet had already screenshotted, archived, and distributed them across every gossip site and hip-hop forum breathing. Tip's public response was measured. He essentially told the internet to mind its business, making it clear that what happened between him and his son was a family matter and outside opinions were irrelevant. And this wasn't even the first time, because reports pointed to a previous run-in at a Waffle House back in 2022 that suggested a pattern between father and son, a cycle of friction that kept spinning, because the core issue, King's hunger for independence versus T.I.'s need for control, never got fully resolved in any single conversation or confrontation.
He capping. He capping. Hey. He know I stand on business. He know that. Ain't no ever pull my car ever in life.
Even after getting locked up by his own father on camera in front of the whole world, King was still on go, still asserting his toughness was authentic, still pushing back against any narrative that painted him as anything less than real.
I stand on business. You drop me somewhere, I stand on business. You drop me in your hood, I stand on business.
That repetition, that refusal to give up even an inch of ground to his own pops, that tells you everything about where King's head was. He wasn't just debating whether he was tough, he was fighting for his identity, for the right to define himself on his own terms, instead of being measured against a blueprint drawn by a man who grew up in conditions King will never fully comprehend. And that tension, that constant push and pull between a father who made it out the mud and a son who was born above it, is one of the rawest, most universal dynamics in any family, regardless of how much bread is in the bank. Within days, the tone started shifting toward reconciliation. T.I. clarified his love for King in a public post, writing that they were tied together like a knot and that he'd ride to the heavens or the depths of the abyss for his family. He put King's music on blast, specifically a joint called Father Like Sons with his brother Damani, showing the world that despite the public explosion, the bond between father and son was cracked but not broken. By 2025, King posted a reflection calling himself the man his father raised him to be, adding that they were finally seeing eye to eye, proof that the Falcons game incident, ugly as it was, might have been the turning point instead of the point of no return. If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen.